Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 4 of creating a literature review. This is the last part of this video series, and this is the part where I actually describe kind of the process of writing the review and also avoiding plagiarism. So I do want to point you in the direction of 2 resources in case you don't feel like you know as much as you need, to be comfortable when you finish the video. The links to these 2 resources, one from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and one from the University of Arizona, those links are in the literature review module in our Canvas course. So one of the tools that might be helpful to you is to use what's called a synthesis matrix. And so as you are making those tracks, like we talked about in the last video, picking out what's important, you can begin to record those things on a matrix. And it's a way to really lay out the information so you can see what you have and where it came from. It's a really simple tool. It's kind of created as it matches what you're doing for your project, but it's basically a graphic organizer that lets you kind of see visually the ideas as they start forming. If you want a more in-depth explanation of using a synthesis matrix, I included this just little 2-page article in our Canvas course in the literature review full module, and it will give you a little bit more information and actually have an example of a synthesis matrix. So that's one place to really start kind of laying out your ideas before you start writing. I'm going to show a couple of other things you can do. Neither is better or worse than the other. It's really what matches your own style. I would not absolutely think that you would use all of these tools. You may like a graphic organizer, which is something I've used quite a bit in my writing. I actually like to get a big piece of paper and map out the literature review using a graphic organizer, and sometimes I'll intermix sticky notes with a graphic organizer. So I'll get a big piece of chart paper maybe, or even a 11 by 14 piece of paper. Gives you a little bit more room to spread out. So if you're a real visual person, it doesn't have to be a web like this. It could be any kind of organizer that makes sense to you, but that's a good way to start laying out the information so that you can see what you have before you sit down and start writing. You could use an outline. So what I've created here is just a simple outline. You see it starts with number 4. Really, your outline would start with number 1, but I'm starting with number 4 because I'm going to take this outline, and I'll show you in just a second what I'm going to do with it. So I have identified my broader ideas, numbers 1, 2, and 3. Underneath that, I have my subtopics, and for each of those, I've included a citation. So that's where I would go back to when I get ready to write if I need some more information. Now, what's important about this outline is that I want you to pick up on the idea that when you're writing the literature review, you're writing about the topics. So you're writing about effectiveness as learning tools, and you may have 2 or 3 or even 4 different resources that give you information to describe that. And then your next topic, engagement, can be enhanced. And then you have your resource there, your next topic, challenges, and so forth. So I want to reiterate this idea that a literature review is not a summary of the articles you read, but rather an explanation of the topics that emerged as you read the articles. So it's not organized by article, it's organized by topic. Now I want to take this list and I want to come over here to my action research study that I've been talking about. So here's the e-textbook section. So in this section, I took my outline that you just saw, and now I used number 1 on the outline to be my first paragraph. And then I used number 2 on the outline and number 3. Actually, they both fit into this next paragraph. So I'm taking what's on that outline, and I have the same citations that I listed for subtopics A and B. I have those here built within my paragraph. So I'm taking that outline now, and I'm actually using that to be the framework for the paragraph. And then I'm filling in around that framework with transition sentences or sentences that help link the ideas together. So I start with the outline, move into the paragraph, fill in the gaps so that the ideas flow together. And I continue that all the way through. I'm just showing you two little example paragraphs here. So I'm making my point here, for instance, in this paragraph, I'm talking about using e-textbooks for learning and engagement and how that can be enhanced. And then I give an example right here of interactive technologies, and I cite that with my citation here. The next part of the paragraph talks about challenges to using e-textbooks. And I give an example of that, lack of comfort with reading on a screen, and I give my citation. Another example, requiring to have access to the internet, and I give my citation. So sometimes my example comes at the beginning of the paragraph, like it does right here, interactive technologies, and then my explanation of why that's important. Sometimes my explanation comes first, challenges, and what those challenges are. And using that variety in your writing helps to make your writing interesting. So you're not starting all of the paragraphs the same, saying, this is my idea, here's why it's important, but you're varying that style. That makes your writing more interesting. But let's come back to our slides here. So we had three examples. We had the synthesis matrix, we had the graphic organizer web, and we had the outline. And there could be dozens of other tools. I just wanted to give you three examples to start from. So let's talk just a little bit about plagiarism, because that can get tricky when you're writing a literature review. Let's start with a definition of plagiarism that we're working from for our project, and that's taking credit, either intentionally or unintentionally, for someone else's work, or using someone's exact words without quoting or citing their work. So it's really important at this high level of professional writing that you're doing for your project that you're really sensitive to issues of plagiarism. So here's some maybe tips that can help you avoid plagiarism. One thing that I do is I follow this strategy of read, cover, write. It's tempting once you read something and then you go to write it, whether it's in your synthesis matrix or on your outline or wherever, it's tempting to just write the same thing. And that's where plagiarism can kind of sneak in unintentionally. So a good strategy is to read something and then turn it over, cover it up, put it away, and then write on your graphic organizer or whatever tool that you're using. It's not enough to take that paragraph and just pluck out a couple of words, because the main idea is still there, and that is still plagiarism. Excuse me. It's a good practice to limit the number of times you include a direct quote of someone else's words in your literature review. Most of the writing should be your own thoughts. They should not be quotes. Sometimes I have seen students string together a list of quotes, 5 or 6 quotes on a page, and that's not appropriate. So a good rule of thumb, although I'm not going to go through and count exactly, but is to have no more than 2 quotes on a page. Now, if you have 3, that doesn't mean you're plagiarizing. It doesn't mean you're going to get a lower grade, but it does mean you're starting to sneak into that use of more of other people's words and less of your own words. So, no quotes is perfectly fine. You don't have to have 2. You don't have to have any if you don't want to, but sometimes the way the person said it is just the best way to say it. And that's fine. Be sure that you're properly citing that quote. You're citing the author or authors, the year the work was published, and you must have the page number. If you don't have the page number, you cannot use a direct quote. This page number is part of APA style. Be sure that you also are including a citation for key ideas or for findings. So, for instance, let's say you're doing your project on literature circles, and you very likely are using Harvey Daniels' work because he's very well known for his work in literature circles. So, when you explain what a literature circle is, if you're using his writing to guide that explanation, then you should include a citation of his work. So, if it's a key idea or if it's a finding from a study that someone did, you should cite their work in the body of your paragraph. And that citation is the author's last name and the year. Do not, please do not cut and paste from an article to your work. That absolutely is plagiarism. And as I said before, even if you do that and you pluck out a few words and you stick a couple of your own words in, excuse me, that still is plagiarism. It really has to begin with your own words throughout really the portion that you're writing. And I know it's tempting. I know it's a hard thing. But the sooner you can remove the work, like I said, read, cover, write, the sooner you can remove the printed version and get yourself doing your own thinking and writing, the better off that you're going to be.